Welcome to the Northern Business Podcast. Each week we're talking to people who are active in business and the economy about the big issues driving growth in the north of England. We're sponsored by Virtue Motors, one of the UK's largest motor retailers. Check out its website at virtuemotors.com. I'm Graham Robb, owner of Recognition PR. We help scores of business promote their products and their services, and some are featured on this podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Down the line today, we have Vicky Wilson, founder and CEO of a bereavement admin service called Settled, which is based in Sunderland. We also have Chris Wilshire. Now, Chris is the head of Northwest office at the UK private and commercial bank, Arbuthnot Latham. And later, my colleague Joss Habakin will be talking to Donna James from Populous Select about the increase in wages and recruitment in STEM, very appropriate in light of this week's unemployment figures. So first of all, let's join our guests down the line, Chris and Vicky. Chris, first of all, I can turn to you. Banks have been in the news quite a lot recently, particularly with the Select Committee in the House of Commons asking whether their higher interest rates are being passed around fairly. But your bank is a little bit different, isn't it? Because it's not one of the high street clearing banks, not what the man in the street would use, but maybe businesses or people with specific banking needs.
Yeah, that's right. We've been supporting clients right the way through actually the low interest environment as well, with what we feel are competitive returns on their deposits. So it's been difficult until very recently to get that. We've moved in line with base rate increases, passing back those rates to our depositors. So it's nice to see the rest of the market catching up with us. But
I was checking before I interviewed you, checking your deposit rates, and they were all over 5%, and I haven't seen that when I've looked at bank websites for a very long time.
Yeah, we like I say, we're constantly reviewing where rates are, where we think they're headed. Our Treasury Department are very active on that, and we're active with our clients in terms of helping them to stay ahead of the next increase.
Now, you're based in the Northwest, and the bank obviously offers its services across the north of England. What makes you different? What kind of organisations do you serve, and how do you do it differently to the regular big name banks?
Yeah, so we're a private bank for starters, and that's, I suppose, in both senses of the word, in terms of the way that we look after clients. We look after private clients, but we're also majority privately owned, and that changes the way we approach the banking business. I look after the Manchester office. We've got a head office in London, which has been around for 190 years, so long time. And we really deliver old-fashioned values in terms of what clients might expect from banking.
I ask you then, what a typical kind of client would be for you? What kind of business or individual will you serve?
A lot of our clients in the Northwest particularly tend to be entrepreneurial people owning and running businesses, or who have owned and run businesses, and they come to us because they need that personal service. We operate on a human scale. We're nothing like the size of the big banks that you hear about in the news, but that enables us to be more personal, and so we build long-term relationships with clients. We're there for that journey, and we're able to leverage the knowledge of that we've built up over the years working with clients like that, when we're helping clients either run their business, buy a home, get a decent return on their deposits, or plan for their future, and that might be protection or succession within their business. So lots and lots of different things all under one roof, and my team here help me to do that for our clients in the north.
So can I ask you, do you cherry pick your clients? Are you only going to go for businesses that are mature and have been going for a long time and making a profit, or would you? We've got a smaller business we're going to talk to soon. Will you allow startup and smaller businesses to bank with you?
Yeah, we've been known to do that. We don't do it uniformly because our setup wouldn't really support us being a banker on that kind of scale. But we do help smaller businesses, and particularly those where we think over the long term of that relationship we can add some value. So it is about making sure that we're looking after clients who are going to get something from us. It is a two-way relationship, very much so with our service. So I wouldn't say we cherry pick, but we are looking to make sure we're offering value for money to clients.
Okay. Now, we're in an environment where the economy is doing quite well from the point of view of unemployment. I'm based in the northeast of England. You're based in the northwest. Both the northeast and the northwest had a really good set of unemployment figures announced this week. Yorkshire not quite so good. And in the northeast, there was also employment figures. The number of people being employed went up. And the northeast, surprisingly, saw the largest decrease in unemployment. For the first time in many, many years, the northeast has got less unemployment than the national average as a percentage. Now, this benign environment is causing interest rates to go up. Is it causing your clients to understand that it's benign and that maybe they have to watch their costs, or what is their sentiment? What would you describe their sentiment as?
I would say it depends on where your assets are placed. So those who are invested in property, for example, are seeing their yields being eaten into. So there's some restructuring going on in that part of the market. They may be thinking about how much leverage they have in their portfolio. We're also seeing clients considering whether or not cash offers a safer alternative to investments at the moment. We'll have discussions with them about that, and that's really set against their objectives. The thing I hear most from clients, particularly running businesses, is around attracting and retaining talent. This low unemployment actually is quite challenging when you're looking for growth, and it's difficult to find people who are going to help you to realize that.
And of course, the other end of the unemployment figures that I just described was the wage growth figures, which are at 7.3% now. And in certain sectors, they're even higher, depending on the talent issue. Now, both the Northwest and the Northeast have had a lot of levelling up funding. Teesside has done particularly well out of different initiatives with its mayor. And of course, Greater Manchester with its mayor it was first into the Northern Powerhouse initiatives. Maybe that can explain some of the data we're getting on jobs. What is your bank wanting to do to get involved in this levelling up or this Northern Powerhouse sort of momentum that's going on in different businesses?
Well, I think where we fit in is with supporting that entrepreneurial base. So those job creators, those people who are running the businesses that are creating that growth in the north and the northwest, and we're there to help support them, to help them make planning decisions about how they grow their business, what they do in the future. That in itself is drawing wealth into the region, and that trickles down to the economy on a wider basis.
And there's been some other banking things in the news recently. I'm just going to ask you a little, maybe not designed to be a trick question, but a little litmus test question. There's been quite a lot of news about people who've lost their banking status, where they say they're politically exposed people. Nigel Farage was talking about it, but some people on Labour and Liberal and Conservative members of the House of Lords have talked about difficulties banking when they're high profile. And I was talking to a business a few months ago that had defence contracts. It was a manufacturing business. It wasn't actually making munitions, but it was involved in the defence supply chain. And they'd had problems attracting bank finance. Do you take a more considered view than the ESG committees of the big banks?
I would say we take a very considered view. So we're very interested in knowing who our clients are and what they do. It's very important in the industry as a whole to make sure that we're living up to the compliance and the anti-money laundering rules that we're set as banks to ensure that our clients are operating in the right circumstances. from an ESG point of view, I wouldn't say that. Well, I know that that's not a specific consideration in terms of whether or not we would onboard a client, albeit that we are trying to get a feel for that individual, whether or not they're going to be the type of client that we want to work with, and that's maybe an advantage that we have as a private bank.
You can take a human view rather than a computer says no.
Yeah, we're certainly not ticking boxes. We do have quite a detailed onboarding process, which some of our clients will attest to. But ultimately, we come out of that really understanding them and building up an excellent foundation for the future.
Well, Chris, it's good. We'll come back to you probably, but it's good to hear about alternatives in banking. Now let's talk to Vicky. Vicky, you set up a new business. It's a small business. First of all, tell us what it does.
Yes, so Settled is a service which helps people to close and transfer accounts when somebody's died. So we cover everything from banks all the way through to social media accounts. So rather than them having to contact all companies separately, fill in lots of forms, send lots of emails, hang around on call queues, they can just come to us, fill in one form, upload one copy of the death certificate, and then we do the rest. And we pull all the details back for them in a very simple dashboard.
And how do you make money doing it? What's the level of charges? Are you transparent about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a free service for members of the public, and we charge businesses that use us because on the flip side, what we're doing is giving them operational efficiencies, which previously they didn't have access to. So the banks, the utilities, so on, they will pay for the service.
Give me an example of the kind of business that would pay for your service.
I mean, we notify over 1,000 companies now, so it's all of the biggest banks through to, the likes of your LinkedIns and your Facebooks. So it depends on the level of partnership that we have with those organizations, but typically speaking, it could be any company that recognizes a need to improve customer care in their bereavement team. And they will opt in for the platform that we've built, and they'll pay for the notifications that we send them.
Vicky, there is already I can't remember the exact name. My late wife passed away about 9 years ago, so I can remember doing it. I can't remember the name of it, but there is a service that's offered through government, Tell Them Once or something like that, so that driving licenses don't have to be cancelled, passports don't have to be cancelled. How does it differ to that?
Yeah, so Tell Us Once is a great service. The only issue is that it covers, as you said, government accounts. It doesn't handle non-government accounts. So when somebody dies, yes, you can go and tell DVLA and council tax, but then you're still going to have to go and inform the banks, utilities, insurers, pension providers, so on and so forth. So we actually used Tell Us Once when my grandma passed away. She was the motivation for setting up Settled. But then it was all the other accounts that needed to be attended to, which took hours and then months of chasing up. That led to the idea of building this platform, this service for the people. I
do remember, it was a long time ago that I had to go through it, but things like social media and Facebook was difficult. NHS pensions wasn't as easy as I'd thought, but we did get through it. And I suppose, I was sort of bracing myself. My late wife passed away, and we knew that was going to happen, but particularly if it had been a shock to the system, if one wasn't prepared, if there is a sudden death, particularly for someone of younger age or in work, that adds to the complexity.
It can do, yeah. I think that's one of the challenges. So if the account details aren't stored or logged and the family isn't aware of how to access those accounts, it can certainly add to the complexity. Yeah, and we also see there's problems around missing or dormant accounts and policies. So if somebody's changed name or they've moved house, for example, it can sometimes be quite difficult to access those assets. And in general, we have a problem with that in the UK. It's worth £20 billion in terms of the assets that are left on the table because the details haven't been necessarily logged or stored ahead of time.
So you've got this new business that's been established, and you said that you knew about it, you thought about it because you went through a personal experience with your grandmother.
Yeah.
But how have you managed to, what hurdles have you had to navigate in order to establish the business?
Oh, it's been challenging. I think the first thing is that people don't necessarily know that they need you until they need you. So that's the difficulty, right? It's making sure that you reach people at the right time in a sensitive way. And the second thing is there isn't a standard across the bereavement landscape. So, we work with over 1,000 companies, it's been difficult to get to the point where they all work in the same way. Each has its own internal challenges, its own legacy systems. There's lots of things going on within that individual organization that make processes on the other side for individuals very difficult. If you think that most people leave behind 15 to 20 accounts, that's 15 to 20 different challenges that a family is going to face if they don't come to a company like ours. So we're getting there, but it's definitely been a process. It's taken some time to wrestle those things through.
And tell us about the staffing and the way the company's grown.
Yeah, so we're a technology company, right? So we benefit from the fact that this is an automated machine. So notifications come into us and then they are distributed out to organizations, and we don't spend a lot of time at all on any of the manual processes that I think an individual or a family would have to, which means that we can keep our operations very lean. So we're a small team, we're growing, but we don't need a lot of people to be able to handle the volumes that are coming through and are growing all the time.
Okay, Chris, you've been listening to Vicky there. I'm not going to ask you about your bank's policies on dealing with bereavement, because clearly banks are an issue. But as a business, there's Vicky, a small business. How long have you been going now, Vicky?
It's been 3 years now.
3 years. Is Vicky the kind of business that you think the future of the north and of England depends on? That's technology, it's a novel idea, a bit of innovation.
I mean, technology has been one of the cornerstones of the Northern powerhouse as it's grown up. So, and that's definitely a huge growth area. We're seeing that in Manchester, where I'm based, and across the north. So, absolutely. And I think there's a whole range of ways that that businesses like Vicky's and like Settled can access the wider networks here. It is one of those big things around leveling up is connectivity, and that's not just roads and rail. It's relationships with people in the in the entrepreneurial sector for us, and knowing what's going on.
I know it sounds had some help from some of the big law firms in the north of England. I think Womble Bond Dickinson have been supporting you and helping you out. But what about things, I don't name your bank necessarily, but when it came to establishing the business and getting bank account going and everything, was that a hurdle for you?
Is that a question to me?
Yes. How did you find it when you were establishing the business 3 years ago, getting your banking sorted?
We went with one of the challenger banks, and they were fantastic. They set everything up in a day. Right. And actually, because we got a grant through, we started out with an Innovate UK grant, and we needed an account very quickly, and we called the mainstream banks, and they couldn't help us. And then we went to a challenger, and everything was sorted within 24 hours. They were fantastic. So
I suppose, Chris, that's music to your ears, because you're outside the big mainstream clearinghouses, aren't you?
Yeah. We're somewhere between the high street and the challenger banks. I couldn't commit to that kind of time frame, definitely. But we're always working towards it, and we want, a big part of what we do is give time back to our clients, and that certainly is, those days of form filling, we're trying to put behind us.
And Natalie, you do employ a couple of people, I know. How's wage growth affecting your business?
I mean, I think from our perspective, we've just budgeted in. I mean, when we did our forecasting to begin with, we always looked at the fact that we would need to increase salaries in line with performance, and we would need to pay competitively. So we've been okay on that front, but I do know a lot of businesses that have really struggled, and I think it's something to be looked at. A lot of businesses that we know also are dealing with contractors versus bringing in FTEs for that particular reason. So it's not been a problem on our side, but I think generally speaking, I think it can be an issue in the wider industry. Yeah.
Well, Vicky, Chris, thank you for talking to us on the Northern Business Podcast. It's great to talk to you, and all the best with your venture, Vicky. Sadly, I would have needed something like that a few years ago. Hopefully I won't need it again for a long time. And Chris, all the best with your banking. Maybe you'll have another 190 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now on the Northern Business Podcast, over to my colleague, Josh Haverkin.
Thanks, Graham. I'm pleased to be speaking with Donna James. Donna is the Research Director at Populus Select. It's a recruitment and research firm which specialises in senior and skilled positions in the science and specialist engineering sectors. Populus is headquartered in Darlington in the sunny northeastern Tees Valley, but it does have offices in Germany and London and works with firms across the world, including the US, the UAE, Australasia, the Far East, and just about everywhere else. I think the only place you're not in is Antarctica. So thank you very much for coming on, Donna.
It's my pleasure. Great to see you.
Brilliant. So some interesting figures out recently from the Office for National Statistics all around employment and remuneration. The Northeast, where I'm based, has historically been the worst region for work, but it appears it's becoming a bit of a talisman for success. The regional unemployment rate up here in the Northeast in March to May was 3.5%. That is a fall of 0.7 in the 3 months from December 2022 to February 2023. And that compares with a rise of 0.2 to 4% in the UK as a whole. So that's a record low for this sunny little corner of the UK. It's very rare that the Northeast has an unemployment rate of below 5%. And more good news, the Northeast employment rates, that's people who were in work, rose again from March to May by 1.4%. That was the second best performance in the UK after the West Midlands, which had a 1.9% raise, and that's also again above the UK average of 0.2%. So, Donna, have you ever known the Northeast to do so well?
Well, I think it's absolutely great news from the Northeast for our region, showing such strong figures there. And you're quite right, it's very rare for the Northeast to be top of the charts, as it were. I think there have been times when we've seen good figures, but as I said, it's very rare, and it's almost unheard of for the Northeast to be at the top of those growth charts in that way.
Obviously, you specialise in STEM roles, as I've mentioned. Do these figures stack up with what you're seeing here and in the other countries that you're working in?
I think STEM roles are maintaining their real wage growth much more than other sectors. Financial services has remained quite strong, but anecdotally, I've heard of a 25% rise in STEM wages, and the data supports STEM, the professional, the scientific sector holding up well against inflation. So in the figures for 2022, for example, it was professional and scientific sector was the only sector that kept pace with the high inflation that we saw.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Don. I'm going to ask you one last question, and this is your own opinion. Do you think that we've seen the end of wages increasing at this kind of rate?
Not yet. That's my opinion. I think we might see continued inflationary pressure from wages for a little while until we see those interest rates come down and inflation in general come down a bit.
Well, there you have it. So thank you very much, Donna. I'm going to go back to Graham now. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sure we'll have you on another episode soon.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joss and Donna. Now, if you'd like to join us as a guest on Northern Business Podcast, or you know someone who you think would be a good guest, do get in touch, because we're booking for our autumn schedule now. You can get in touch via LinkedIn or in the comments below. And also join us next week for the next Northern Business Podcast. Never miss an episode. Like, rate and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.